Welcome, everyone. I'll call to order the Kentucky Public Pension Authority Ad Hoc Budget Committee special meeting on October 30th, 2025. So, Mr. Goodrich, could you start us with the opening statement, please?
Absolutely. This is a special called meeting of the Ad Hoc Budget Committee of the Kentucky Public Pensions Authority. This meeting is being broadcast via video teleconference pursuant to Kentucky Revised Statutes Section 61.826 and may be viewed by the public at the Kentucky Public Pensions Authority offices at 1260 Louisville Road, Frankfort, Kentucky. It is also being broadcast to the public via Facebook. If you are speaking and are not appearing by video, please identify yourself before talking. Please ensure that you are on camera when making or seconding a motion or casting a vote. In the event the video or audio broadcast is interrupted, we will attempt to reestablish a connection. If the connection cannot be reestablished within 30 minutes, the meeting will be adjourned and rescheduled to another date.
Thank you. Ms. Rankin, can you do roll call, please?
Yes, sir. Mr. O'Meara
Here.
and Mr. Lane.
Here.
Thank you.
Next is the approval of the September 22nd, 2025 meeting minutes. To have a motion to approve.
I'll make that motion.
I guess I'll second. Any discussion, corrections? Hearing none, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Minutes have been approved. So now I think it's time for Mr. Lamb to take the mic and give us his presentation. Mr. Lamb.
Hi there. Can everyone hear me?
Yes.
Sure can.
Yeah, okay. Let me share a screen. We're going to discuss the history and methodology of the hybrid percentage, and then we will get into some of the large categories in the employee costs in some of those large categories, and then we'll discuss any changes to the hybrid percentage, what it calculates at right now, etc. I'm happy to take any questions as we go along, so feel free to interrupt me. This was the memo that was first presented to the KPPA board back in March of 2022 with the new structure of the governance of CERS and KERS and SPRS, of the splitting of the boards. There was a task force formed, or a work group formed. Here were the members of them, Mr. O'Meara, Mr. Lane. They can't seem to get out of the budget ad hoc committee. Mr. Eager, Mr. Owens, and Mr. Chilton were on that committee, and this was the memo that was presented to the KPPA board. They were tasked with how to allocate costs to the CERS, KRS, including SPRS systems, in accordance with KRS 61505. The current allocation back then was basically the administrative costs of the Kentucky Retirement System as an agency was being charged to the various pension funds by headcount or member numbers. And that was the basis for many of the past years. There were some direct specifically benefit payments, legal fees that were tracked in what was called the trust budget back then. And there are some examples of those direct benefits. Other costs that came out of the trust budget or the investment budget were based on assets under management. That is still the case today. So, for example, the custodial bank fees, the research and analysis tool that Steve's team uses is still coming out of the investment budget and allocated to those plans based on assets under management. This was kind of the reasoning back for the administrative costs being based on members, etc. So that particular work group looked at potential methodologies on finding a new way to allocate admin costs among the pension plans. And so they looked at membership, as noted. This had been done historically, etc. There's different types of staffing positions that while some positions increased with membership, not all did. Legal staff, for example, is more dependent on number of court cases, legislative changes, and system complexity. So that there was some good things about membership, some things that didn't really track with membership. They looked at assets under management and noted investment expenses are not tracked with admin expenses. Neither are assets and liabilities connected to non-investment staffing and compensation, etc. But the work group did consider assets under management as a driver for investment staff compensation. And they looked at splitting admin costs 50-50 between CERS and KRS. They felt that there were some services that are not member dependent. For example, the actuary. And while staffing constitutes a major portion of the admin budget, not all staffing positions increase with membership increasing. For example, executive leadership, information technology, security, and development is not exclusively driven by the number of members, but also by complexity of plan and rules. So that particular work group concluded on doing a hybrid percentage. And what they did is they took aspects of membership, aspects of assets under management, and aspects of 50-50. And then they split the admin budget into large categories. In general, anything that had a spend of more than $100,000 was kind of assigned an allocation method that best fit that category. And that was then the methodology for that particular line item. So blending all of that together, they came up with a single hybrid percentage that would be applied to admin costs during the fiscal year. And so this was their first calculation. They kind of had membership, they had assets under management, the percentage for each system, CERS and KRS. Here's their large categories: personnel, legal contracts, auditing, etc., operational categories, and then this was their allocation method assigned to that category. Here was the budgeted expenses for fiscal year 22, and so that $48 million in total, 29.9 million was kind of allocated to CERS based on this, and 18 million to KRS, and there's the percentages. And so that's what they presented to the board. Here was the different options if they just did membership. So if they just allocated everything on membership, CERS would have been 65, KRS 34. This is 62 and 37. Assets under management, 73% is CERS and 26% is KRS. And then an even split obviously would be 50-50 among them. And then here's the hybrid percentage that was calculated above. Apparently during that meeting, recommended that they approve these hybrid percentages and allow KRS to determine their own splits within KRS and CERS to determine their own splits among the hazardous and non-hazardous and state police, and then reevaluate this split prior to the beginning of every fiscal year, make changes so they did this in fiscal year 22. So they retroactively applied the hybrid percentage to fiscal year 21, and then they use the fiscal year 22 hybrid percentage for 23. I apologize. I think they just retroactively went back to starting on July 2021. So it was fiscal year 22 they applied it to, and then fiscal year 23. And there was an updated memo, I think, during this meeting. Let me move my sharing for a minute. In the April meeting, there was an update. I think the KPPA board asked them to take legal advocacy out of the 50-50 split and do it based on membership, because most of their duties have to do with membership cases. And so that legal advocacy was changed to membership, and that changed the hybrid percentage from the 62.39 and 37.61 to 62.68 and 37.72. And so that was presented in April after the March meeting. And I wanted to show you the hybrid percentages historically. So there was that fiscal year 22 amount that got approved, 62.68, 37.32. They kept that same amount for fiscal year 23, 62.68, 37.32. And then here's been the percentages from 24 to 25 and 26. And I can talk about the changes in that methodology over those years, what minor changes they've been, and we can go through that. Questions now before my next plan would be then to play with this hybrid percentage pro forma, show you what I've calculated based on historical, go through some of these categories, look at what's changed with the employee listing, etc. So, but before I do that, is there some questions or concerns at this point before I move on?
Mike, one point in that history is that they first started out using budget and then changed to using the year before actual expenses for that allocation. Just wanted to make that observation.
That's correct. And there was one other thing. Let me go back to the spreadsheet, this memo, and talk about a couple other things. The work group wanted to be both equitable to both systems, CERS and KRS, and simple to make it easier on accounting staff and the people who are allocating this budget. And so, and that gives to some transparency and auditability. And that was one of their main objectives, and to limit the amount of manual entries that happen. And I can talk about how those entries occur currently as well. And then the other thing I wanted to mention, what did I want to mention? In the original memo. Oh, yes. So here was yes, Mr. O'Meara is correct. This was based on the $48 million budget that they had for fiscal year 22. And here's where the people that were in those legal classifications. So here was the executives, here was legal personnel, legal advocacy, the investments team, and then individuals that were employed specifically for C and specifically for K. And so that becomes relevant in a minute when I talk about the personnel changes in a moment. So yes, thank you, Mr. O'Meara, for pointing that out. Okay, so when I came on board, I looked at the budget and, for example, in this, there was some vacant positions in here. Staff attorney 3, staff attorney supervisor. There's a staff attorney 3 over here. And so those were budgeted salaries in that $48 million that got allocated. And it was very possible that those employees were never hired. I can't say they were or they weren't, but if they weren't hired, then there would have been some costs that would have been allocated to some systems without actual costs. And so I made a proposal to the budget group that maybe we do actual costs when you're in arrears. That way we're using a better percentage that represents actual spend. And as many of you know, sometimes that budget had, a little bit of cushion in it, at times a few $1 million that was then being allocated to systems and when it wasn't really being spent. We don't have that cushion anymore, but that's when we changed to actual expenditures. And so here's the personnel categories, same ones as before. We got executives, legal advocacy, investments, and then everybody else. And here's their allocation: 50-50 for execs, 50-50 for legal, membership for advocacy, and assets under management for investments. The other categories are legal contracts that are not specific to a C or K case. For example, your general counsel for the C board and the K board are charged directly to the C and K system. Auditing expenses, actuarial expenses, medical examiners and hearing officers, and then other. And that's in we call that personnel still because it's contract and it's mostly people. Everything's 50-50 except for medical examiners and hearing officers. That's membership. And then under operation, we have buildings and equipment, IT, other, and then again, the contingency was the cushion that we had under the budget process, under using the budget method. So all of those operationals are based on membership for the most part. That's the large categories.
Right.
Mr. Chilton has his hand up.
Yes. You're muted.
Go ahead, John. I
Mr.
think you're
Chilton.
on mute still.
Thank you. I had a question about the CERS, KRS personnel. Are those allocated directly or is it according to membership at the present time?
No, so currently so your salary and related costs are 100% charged to the KRS system. Mr. Owens' salary and benefit costs are charged 100% to the C system.
Okay. Thank you.
Yep. So here's my history of the employees. And so going back to that chart that was in that memo to begin with, again, I have highlighted the budgeted positions. And then when we were
Mike?
coming up with a hybrid percentage, yes.
Your screen isn't changing that I can see. And then Mr. Cheatham has his hand up.
Go ahead, Mr. Cheatham, while I find the right screen to share.
Thanks, Mike. Yeah, because I'm not even seeing your screen at all. Not sure if it's in your share
Okay,
set.
apologize.
While you figure that one out, I've got a couple of questions because couldn't identify in your spreadsheets where certain offices fall out at. For example, communications, compliance, ERSI. I think I did see one for technology, and I'll got some questions there. But where are those three falling out with regard to your splits?
Yeah, great question. And I can go through that with the head count. Is this screen sharing now?
Yes, it is. Thank you.
Okay.
I'm
So
still
this
not
is the Excel
seeing,
sheet that
if
I
you
also
can-
sent.
But if you could tell me what page you're on, I've got it open in board book so I can see it better anyway.
So the original memos that I were going through were not in board books. I pulled them
Okay.
off of the old minutes, but now I'm sharing the screen. So this particular one that I will start on is going to be page 2, 3, and 4, but I'm going to start on page 4, which is the very original classification of employee costs. So let me get back to that, the Excel sheet. So Sherry, can you confirm the Excel sheet is sharing to people?
Yep. Yes, I see it.
Okay.
And when you say page four,
and again, I
sorry,
think this is
I'm sorry, Mike, but when you say page 4, is that of your presentation, not the board books?
It's probably of the
I'll have
PDF.
to have Sherry confirm what it's of the PDF, but that's what I gave to board position. So there's probably the agenda is probably page 1, so this could be page 5. It has hybrid percentage for fiscal year 2022 was based on fiscal 2022 budgeted positions, and then it has 4 columns.
Yeah, I have that on page 12 of 15, Mr. Cheatham.
Thank
Okay, thank you. Yeah, I don't have board books up. All right, thank you, Vicky. Again, so like I said, this was the original categories, and Mr. Cheatham, I'll get to where communications and the other categories are. I actually have a question about that for this committee to discuss as well. So again, we only split out executive, legal advocacy, and investments. All other positions, ERSI, communications at the time, call center was based on membership. So all other KPPA staffing costs went to membership with the exception of the CEOs. The CEOs went specifically to C&K. So those were the people. Again, we used budgeted positions back then, so there were some positions that were not filled. Then I'm going to guess on page 13 of 15. One page back, you're going to see the 2022 and 2023 people. And then the highlighted yellow is what changed from the year before. So for example, in calculating the hybrid percentage for fiscal year 23, 2024, we moved Erin, who in the prior year was under just membership because she was the executive director of membership, but she's an executive director, so we moved her up to the executive director line and took her out of membership. These were new people, and Chase Odell had moved into legal, wasn't on the list the prior year, or was hired by legal. Legal advocacy had some new people that weren't there before. Maybe they were the staff attorney threes that got hired. I'm not sure, but basically these were the new people that came into those same categories. We didn't add any categories. We kept executive, we kept legal advocacy, and we kept investments. And then this was the total actual cost. So the actual cost of these employees include their salaries, their FICA employer payments, their employer contribution rates to the retirement system. If they terminated, it may have vacation payout or comp time payout in their benefit costs. If they have life insurance, I think we pay $1 per person. So all of their costs are accumulated and captured in this calculation. And it's specific to all the individuals. So I didn't put those individual costs in here, although I have them, but this is the total by group. And 1.8 million was the total for fiscal year 20. Those were actual for 22, and we use that for the 24 hybrid percentage. So I'm just going to go on to the next year. So actual cost for fiscal year 23, it increased to 32.9 million. But basically, these were the new people. I was hired on in January 23, so I was a new person to executive. We had an additional admin person, Miss Katie Park, who was part of that group. And then here's the new people that joined legal. In yellow, some of them might have replaced other people. Some of these people might have terminated, but if they have costs in this fiscal year, they're in here. And then legal advocacy, here's the names of them. And then we hired Brian in investments, so we added his name to them. And then I started tracking the individual CEOs as well and their total costs. And then again, here's all other KPPA staff, communications. The compliance officer at the time was actually in investments. So Mr. Crawford was there in investments. And so here is the all KPPA staff, 32.9 million. And then we get on to last year's hybrid percentage, which is currently in effect right now, based on 6/30/24 actual costs. Again, had a couple of different executives that had costs in here. Mr. Barrow and Mr. Eager, as you know, he didn't leave till July, so there was some costs associated with him. Mr. Barrow was new, highlighted in yellow. I didn't, so I apologize for that. Katie was here as part of the fiscal year. So we've got, that's the total cost there. Here's the legal group. And for some reason, I didn't highlight everyone in yellow. So I apologize for that. And then here's legal advocacy, investments. Mr. Crawford's last day, we had his 10-3. So he had some costs here, and that position remained vacant for a while. But then again, we end up with $35 million in the personnel category. And then currently, in preparing for the fiscal year 27 hybrid percentage, these are the actual administrative salary and benefit related costs for these groups for fiscal year 6/30/2025. I highlight these in yellow. We did have some things from Mr. Eager. Again, sorry. Ryan actually had one paycheck in June. That's why or in July of that fiscal year. So that's why he came on in there. And Mr. Eager this is the tail end of Mr. Eager's service right here. Sandy was a new admin person that actually replaced Katie. We had some people move internally. So Mr. Goodrich was part of advocacy. Then he moved to legal on January 1/25. So I've split his salary and put it in the right bucket for those periods of time. And then this particular individual was hired in May. So that's a new person. New person here, Miranda. Miss Taylor was new and then left in the fiscal year. Miss Dalton was advocacy as of June, so her other salary is up here as well. And then Carrie Bass became the compliance officer on effective 11/1. So her 11/1 salary on, I've put down here in investments. Ian Blakecock is a new hire that started in June of this year. And again, we have all other things. So the one question I would like to discuss today for me personally is Carrie's position going forward. I think for this 6/30/2025, she was definitely compliance officer, civic investments for the most part from November 1 on, because she reported to Steve. Since then, she's now been reallocated to me in October. So I don't know if she really belongs in investments anymore. So that's a discussion to have. All right, so that's the history of the people. Mr. Cheatham, did that give you some clarification of where these groups lie? If I can clarify more, I'm happy to do so.
A little bit. The communications and technology. I don't see a category for them.
They are currently they are in all other KPPA staff, and they are split by membership.
Okay. That's certainly an area that I have some questions about, along with the one that you brought up with regard to compliance.
Great. Understood. So currently, if I go to the hybrid percentage tab, and again, this is going to be, I'm going to guess page 11, Jerry, of 15. It's purple of board books. Can someone confirm what board book page it's on for me?
Page 9.
Thank you, Mr. Romero. Page 9 in board books was the hard copy of this Excel sheet. I also had Sherry included in the media invitation. It's an Excel document. It's meant to be played with. It's easy to break, but it's meant to be played with, and you can change some things to see what the calculation is. But based on current membership reports that will, as of 6/30/2025, the total membership is gone from 433 to 444,000, with CERS having 295,000 and KRS having 149,000. That Excel spreadsheet shows you that percentage change as well as a dollar or headcount change. So that's current membership as of 6/30/25. Assets under management as of 6/30/25 is there. 21.2 billion with 14.3 in the C system and 6.9 in the K system. Compared to last year, again, there's some changes that show you that. 50/50, still 50/50. So I'm applying these categories. Again, we just went through all of those personnel costs. That total personnel cost is 34.6 million. Plus the CEO salaries of 303,000. So I'm just trying to show you that the total ties. And then I have some accrual salary costs in the ACFR that don't get allocated until they actually pay out, which would be the first pay period of the next fiscal year. So that total number is 35,021. And I hope I'm right. I'm not right. So I'm off a little bit. 34,490. Why am I off? 34,960. Someone's cost is off for me. Oh, that was just, I got to look at everyone's cost, which I thought I did 34. Why is that off? Should not be off. All right, nonetheless, I know this number is right. I will definitely validate it for sure, but these are the personnel costs in all of these categories. 34.6 million, the CEO's cost of 303,000 total. Why does that get moved? Then this allocated accrual for payroll. This is the total admin costs for pension costs, specifically $44.2 million. And I tie that to the current act audited right now for $2 million, the amount of admin costs that are to be allocated. There are some costs that we take out of that 44.2 million. We take direct costs. We take the personnel salaries. We take general counsel costs specific to C&K. We take other specific legal costs specific to C&K, as well as few other specific costs. So traditionally, they've taken election expenses and charged them directly to the system in which that election is occurring. So the contractor cost for that election and the postage related to that election. So those numbers are in here. So if I take this 44.2 million, I back out the accrual that we don't do, and I back out this 1.1 million of direct costs allocated here. I have $42.9 million to allocate or to base the hybrid percentage on. And these are basically admin costs that are not specific to C or K. These are KPPA admin costs broken down by these large categories. And we went through the personnel, and now we have also other legal contracts, audit costs, actuarial services, medical examiners, other rentals. That's pretty much the rental to the PPW, information technology costs at 3.5 million, and other operational costs. So anything from garbage collection to travel is in that other cost. Then I apply the percentages, either membership, if it's, this member, CERS gets 66.46% of the membership. If it's assets under management, CERS gets 67.39% of this $2 million, and that's what calculates here. And all of that can be updated if you wanted to change one of these just to play around from assets under management to 50/50. You'll see that this allocation for C will go from 1.357 to 1 million. And that then will also flow all the way through to the percentage at the bottom gives you allocation 64.65 versus 35.35 compared to the prior year. CERS is up 0.3 and KRS is down 0.3 in the hybrid allocation. That's normally what I would do, and I would present that to the committee. This committee would review all of that. They would either agree or disagree with it, then they would approve it, and that would be the KPPA board. That's normally done in like April, May, June. But being that I have actuals from 6/30/25, being that I've been proposed questions on the methodology and how we do it and other things, I wanted to bring it to the budget ad hoc committee earlier so that discussion can happen and that resolution can happen over the next few months if needed before we come to fiscal year 27 when a hybrid percentage needs to be put in place. So for the most part, that's my presentation. I'm happy to discuss the methodology. Mr. Cheatham's brought up some good questions about communications, IT. The compliance officer was a question that I had myself as I put together the personnel costs and how to allocate them. And I'm happy to entertain all of them. At the end of the day, I hope we can come to some consensus on how to move forward with that.
Let me just say, Mike, that I appreciate the extensive analysis and support that you've got on hand and available to us. We did want to be fair and equitable and simple. It looks a little complex to me, but I know there's simplicity also in applying groups of expenses. But we were trying to stay short of looking at every expense and deciding as it came across to be paid how it should be allocated. So I just want to say thanks for going through this with us, following what the ad hoc committee had decided in the past. And then I guess we can open it up to questions and observations because it looks like we have interested parties and give them opportunity to make comments and questions. Anyone have any? Lynn, you have your hand up.
Yeah, I'm off mute. Mike and your staff and all that worked on this, I commend you, and I also commend you for explaining it to me and to everybody here. And so great, that's really good. I think as we look at this, you did an exceptional job, and you're looking at things in minutia. I think if we wanted to think about, how we could allocate, this is silly, okay? This is not a serious statement, but I always kind of laugh that KRS has about, I don't know, 40% less, 40% of the total amount of meetings go to KRS and 60% go to CERS. So should we take leadership and allocate it that way? Like I said, that's silly, but I'm sure we could find many things like that. In this case, I think that you've done the job that you and the committee have done the job that works for the organization. So thanks.
Mr. Cheatham, I see your hand is up.
Yeah, I just like to hear discussion or reasoning why some of those, you can take them individually or ever how you want to do it. The compliance officer position to me is 50-50. There's only one person. If we were, going out and totally separated, we'd each have to go hire one. That ought to be a 50-50 expense. I would like to hear the reasoning behind why technology and communications are not also 50-50.
I'm going to give you my opinion on the compliance officer. I'm hoping someone else will discuss communications IT. I have opinions on them too. I definitely think the the compliance officer should be 50-50 going forward, because we filled that position with the intent to take it out of investments and do more KPPA compliance, not specific to investments. So historically, that position was focused on investments. It was investment compliance. That was the job description. I helped rewrite that job description. I helped interview the personnel that was going to fill that position. And ultimately, we hired Carrie, knowing that when the reorganization could happen related to my position, that she would eventually report under me. So all of that, I feel going forward, she should be 50-50. I'm open to debate whether for this, her past costs from 6/30/2025, when she reported to Steve, some of those are legal, but their compliance costs, I'm open. It doesn't move the needle very much for me. It can go 50-50 at that time, or it can stay investments until next fiscal year. But I have no problem supporting a 50-50 split for the compliance officer and any other compliance people that get hired under her, if that ever comes to fruition. With
I don't
IT
have a problem with her position and anything that comes out of it going forward. I think, that's what I assumed this discussion was about, was how we were going to apply these percentages going forward.
Yeah.
Mr. Lane,
So,
your hand's up.
but currently I have her in investments right now, right? For what percentage is going to start being effective July 1. And I'm happy to put her 50-50, even though she was, she's been spending a lot of work on investments, but she's been working on KPPA compliance too over the last 6 months. So I have no problem with her being 50-50 for the 27 hybrid percentage. And that would change this calculation a little bit, but it's not hard to do.
Yeah, I think that the logic of 50-50, I can't find anything other than a time clock that would make a rational allocation any other way. And so I think Lyle's comment is, and Mike's, I'm okay with that.
Me too. You just said that the focus and description had changed, so we should change it to reflect that. Mr. Chilton.
Yes, I was here when we had the discussion about 50-50 or membership. The 50-50 is based on the idea that if we split the two systems, we'd each have to hire a person to replace the one we've got. It's not, that's looking at the cost of it and how to allocate it. But if you look at the benefit to be obtained by each of the systems, the CERS system has twice the number of members for us. They have more than twice the number of employers to deal with. So actually doing many things on a membership basis is not without some rational thought in the process. So the 50-50 is less valid than the membership in a lot of the cases that we've already assigned. So, we can get down with a real sharp pencil on some of this, but I think that's somewhat needless.
Good counterpoint. Anyone else have
My-
a comment?
I was just going to follow up with Mr. Cheatham's question on, let's talk about IT and communications. Again, I'm not involved in the details of communications, but I think they fall currently under all other staff, which is based on membership. And that might go more to John's point is, communication out to the membership is what communications does. They also do a lot of other things like the SAFR, and they help on my ACFRs and this, that, and the other. So I think historically they just felt that that particular group of people would be as busy as they are because of the amount of membership. I don't know that for sure. Maybe Amy could tell us how much time she spends on stuff, if it's 50-50 or if it's driven by membership. I don't know the answer to that. The IT personnel, there's a lot of argument that can go either way. Again, I think when a lot of our IT costs and the contractors, so the IT costs are like $3 to $4 million a year, and a lot of that is contractors that do programming, right, in the START system. The START system sometimes has changes because of C legislation. Sometimes it has changes because of K legislation. Sometimes it has changes because of both. But both systems utilize the START system. You could argue they need it as much as the other system does. It could be 50-50 that related costs and the programmers related to that. Or you could argue that there's 300,000 C members that are in that system and 150 K members. So why isn't it based on membership? Again, those are just points to discuss. But back originally, I'm assuming that original group looked at those IT costs and based it on membership because we have more employees and more computers and more software based on the number of members we have. But I don't know if that's what the discussion had. So I'm happy to take whatever concludes here or later and change the calculation. It's not that difficult for me to do as long as it's what the ad hoc committee wants and eventually the board wants.
Any other
And
comments?
I could
regarding-
if I hypothetically go down here and change just the IT costs, not the IT persons, but information technology. So again, if someone wants to note this number, currently we're at 64.65 for C. And if I change this IT technology 50-50, it's going to bring that down to 63.28%, which is, it's going to lower C's current hybrid percentage to my 1 percentage point, and it would go up 0.3. So that's a 1.32 swing for C and additional cost for K. So that's what this pro forma is meant to be able to do, is to tell you what happens with that. So that would be changing the IT costs, which includes their programmers, includes the software, includes the START system, to 50-50.
Isn't it true that the
Mr. Oh,
oh, go ahead, Pruitt.
Go ahead, John. You started.
Yeah, most of the technology relates to applications used in servicing members. And that would betray the 50-50 idea and doing it based on membership. And it's used by people who deal with both systems.
That follows my point. I've been in the financial world for a long time, 55 years, worked for a number of financial institutions, and Now I'm a financial analyst or have been, and one of the metrics you look at a financial institution, whether it's a bank or an insurance company, is the IT cost per member, which would be depositors at a bank. It would be policyholders at an insurance company. And that's a thing that these financial analysts and these corporate executives compare each other on, is their relative IT cost and it's not gross. And so I think the route we have been going and proposing versus membership, they're our customers, is the correct way to go.
Thank you, Ed. You're next.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I do think that there is utility in looking at what we've done in the past, and I appreciate Mike very clearly laying that out. But part of what was done in the past was the idea that we would review this every year. And that's what we're doing. We're reviewing whether or not assumptions that were made in the past still hold up today. And I would say, as it relates to the IT cost, not only the systems, but I would say the personnel as well, that we really ought to look at this as if we had to have separate systems, what could I do without? And neither system would be able to do without the START system. It doesn't matter whether that system has 50 members or 500,000 members, you would need a START system. So you would then need the IT capability to develop for you that START system and the IT personnel to be able to implement it. So I think that it is rightly determined to be a 50-50 expenditure.
Anyone? Pruitt.
Ed, what you said just said we should do it by the difficulty, the complexity, which is created by the number of members. Not that they're all different, not that they're all the same, but there is, I mean, that's the only metric we have to go with on where the IT process is being effective. And what you said votes for that, not for 50-50.
I believe Mr. Cheatham has his hand up too, Bill.
Oh, I haven't seen your hand. Sorry.
It's all right, I understand. Couple of things, first let's take software and hardware. Whether you buy one server or 10 servers, if that was dependent on the number of members, I would certainly understand it. That's not the case. So hardware, if you want to go in and break it down, I know, Bill, that you want to try to derive a simple system for accounting purposes and budgeting purposes. But things like software, hardware, to me, are clearly a 50-50 deal. You're going to spend the same amount of money, no matter whether you've got one beneficiary out there or whether you've got 1,000 beneficiaries out there. Personnel, not knowing how they are broken down and what their job duties are. If you're talking about just somebody maintaining a website, then that person to me is a 50-50 deal. If it is somebody that is directly dealing with constituents or beneficiaries in this case, then that's another story. But there's another elephant in the room that I hate to even bring up because it's not a budgetary issue, but I think it's something that's valid for context. And that is, we're being asked, and I'm talking about C, to pay for, 63, 65% of all the expenses. Well, where's the factor being calculated as to what the savings is to particularly K for piggybacking off the coattails of C? And what return of that savings should be calculated into this budget? So, I'm specifically looking at fee structures within the investments. So I think, based on that, and based on the fact that we haven't done a calculation of that, that we ought to be looking at some of these expenses with a little bit easier thought as to what we're trying to do and what we're trying to accomplish. The whole idea of separation was for clarity and the ability to sit there and see exactly what's going on and where C's money's going and where K's money's going. And, I would sit there and take a much more lenient look at what some of these expenses are, because both systems, whether we're entirely separate or not entirely separate and trying to work with one another, are going to be the same either way. And IT is one of them. Unless you've got IT people, for example, that are out there doing something that is specific to beneficiaries and taking their time up for C versus K, I'm sorry, it's a 50-50 arrangement.
Just fucking
Haven't
stupid.
gotten to communications yet, but they'll fall into the same line, So I really don't want to open up a bigger can of worms to deal with this, but we've got to work on some tweaks around this allocation.
Mike, you had your hand up.
Was going to just speak a little bit more to the IT costs. I know we don't have Rebecca here, and her expertise was definitely in IT, but I don't necessarily 100% agree with Mr. Cheatham's assessment of that. The IT system also is storage, right? And so if you're storing member account balances and there's 1,400 total employers, 1,200 of them are C, there's a lot of IT costs related to the numbers of persons and storage and complexities related to that bigger membership balance as well as employer balance. So I can't speak to all of them, but I would argue that it's not 50-50. In some aspects, yes. I think once the system's up and running and it's being maintained, like those maintenance costs are probably 50-50 because you have to have a system. But in building the system and then in looking at all the storage and the data that has to be maintained indefinitely, the bigger balance of people and employers you have leads that to be more expensive. But that's just my opinion, not being an IT expert.
Anyone else have a comment? Well, I've never managed an IT shop, so I'm out of my depth as to the intricacies of both the hardware and the software. This seems to be a debatable subject, so I would suggest that we have our IT people come and talk to us about their processes, their organization, how they approach supporting KPPA, the total KPPA, and that might give us some insights that we can then have a more informed decision when we make this call. Lyle touched on investment rates and things. So I think we ought to invite investments to come and talk to us and address tiered pricing versus effective pricing versus average pricing, something that is not my expertise at all. So I think more information is needed in order to continue those discussions. So that would be my comments. Yes, Pruitt.
Touching on the investment side is fairly easy because there is an industry standard that's called assets under management. And there are breakpoints, but I can assure you, having been involved in some of the negotiations that our staff has worked with, they are tough negotiators. They take that breakpoint out of the importance of it and get the cost down to very reasonable. And the study from CEM has shown that we are very effective at being cheaper than our peers for professional management of the investments. And so we basically take that break point, which is that's a concept for the mutual fund industry. That's a concept for retail. This is institutional. We're putting $100-200 million. That gives our guys real leverage, and they use that leverage to get our fees down.
Mr. Chilton.
I had a couple of thoughts here. One is that there's been discussion about an advantage by pooling the investments, in some cases resulting in lower fees. I would think that the lower fees, both K and C benefit by those lower fees. In some cases, it's neutral. The fees would be the same no matter what. But in no case is CERS damaged by pooling the funds to make the investments. Yes, K does get an advantage for that, perhaps more proportionally, but there is no cost, no damage at all to the C investments. That would bring forward the idea that if K were to pay C, we could violate the rule on incurring expenses for the benefit of our members, the IRS rule and the other rules that apply to the way we do business. So I think there's no damage to CERS, and I don't know why it would be appropriate for K to pay C. I would also, as a separate comment, note that when K and C get their allocated amount, both systems allocate it only with regard to membership. There's no breaking it down by system and trying to identify cost. It's just membership. And that would be a sensible rationale to be applied to the KPPA cost.
Mike, do you have anything else for the group today?
Mr. Cheatham has his hand raised.
I'm sorry, I can't. My screen hasn't got you, buddy. You're gonna have to wait.
That's fine. I understand. I'll work on that. I'll make a nice flashing purple one or something for you. I in no way am suggesting that K pay C. Let's be clear on that. But I do appreciate John at least acknowledging the fact that while I do not say that C is being harmed fee wise, I do appreciate the fact that he acknowledges there are some investments, not all, some are neutral, some are not, but if anything, if K is benefiting from some to a pretty significant amount of money. You know, if you take the average break points in 2023, for example, on a $200 million deal, and you split that out, that the typical 70-30 that we see coming out of the investment office, that translates into, you know, the average fee structure reduction at that $250,000 break point, or excuse me, $200,000 break point, is about 91 basis points. That means C is benefiting on a $200 million deal to the tune of over $500,000 a year. So there are significant benefits, and that's fine. I have no problem with that. But in recognizing that, you also need to recognize that some of these gray area costs that we're talking about right now, whether it's technology, whether it's communications office, the compliance officer, that sort of stuff, you need to understand your members are getting a benefit from riding our coattails. You ought to take that into consideration when we negotiate and deal with these other expenses.
We've conceded the 50-50 on many categories.
And I appreciate that, John, but most of those categories are really pretty cut and dry.
Well, they weren't when we first started.
4 years are the ones that are in the gray area.
All right.
Let me go back to something Lyle said there, because you made up a number, 250 million. The break points for these institutional managers, I know you're working wealth management, but I've worked in institutional management for 50 years. Break points are soft. They're not in a contract. They're not in a deal. What happens is negotiation. And many cases, and I don't know where you're coming up with that number, but we don't have these break points out there that, oh, give us another 20 million and you'll drop to 14 basis points. That's just not the way the world works in institutional asset management.
I will be happy, Pruitt, to send you the research we pulled up and where it came from. If it isn't right, fine. But again, you got to acknowledge the more money you put in, the lower fees that you get.
Absolutely. But the break point is
that's all I'm trying to point out.
The break point is a different matter. That's a negotiation that doesn't exist on paper till you get it signed.
Don't disagree with that at all, but you start somewhere, and that's where I'm getting my numbers from.
Well, send me the numbers. Send me those numbers, please.
Yeah. And Pruitt, if I could, to that point, you're absolutely right. The break point doesn't exist until it's signed. And we're only talking about contracts that have been signed. So we fully know what the break points are. We know the net benefit that came to K as a result of it. And we'll be happy to share that information with you.
Well, again, I think it would be appropriate for us to have the investment staff that are involved in this to be involved in this conversation. I just advocate for that, and as well as IT. I mean, again, it's not my wheelhouse, so I want to get as much information as I can before making a decision.
Bill, I 100% agree with you. it's your all's committee to handle whatever you want to. I'm bringing these items for discussion simply because I don't think any of us know exactly how, whether it be time or dollars are spent within the technology department or communications, to, dig down and let's figure it out. You know, we've got to start somewhere, and having conversations with those people will certainly help you identify where those costs are coming from and going to. The investment one, again, I think that's a totally different subject. I just want, the folks on the other side of the fence here, to at least acknowledge there's a benefit that they're deriving that, they could easily share by picking up some of these costs that otherwise, with separation, they would have to go out and deal with on their own and spend more money anyway.
Well, I need to remind everybody and myself that Mike has heard discussions and was the motivator to get this conversation started early, so that we're not facing a deadline that needs to be met, that we have some time to explore whatever the committee feels is appropriate. So I commend Mike for doing that. I commend Mike for a very nice presentation, how we got to where we are today, and work papers that we can get into minutia where we choose to. So again, I want to thank you, Mike, for all the work that you've done to this point and bringing all these things to make comments. I think it's highlighted two areas that have to do with the allocation. Seems that we need to look further into communications and IT. I'm hearing that the investment discussion is a separate discussion and not part of this committee. Am I correct with that?
Definitely, from my perspective, IT and communications can be looked at. Vonda, who's on here, does a really good job of tracking those expenses, and we can get with IT and communication, not just the communication salary we can discuss as well, but I think communication costs, like their printing or whatever they do outside of their salaries, we can look at that. The IT costs are not salary related, they're contractor related and software related. So we can break that out and kind of see where that lies. But we can also discuss the IT salaries as well. As to the investment discussion, Bill, again, I think we have to talk to investments about that. But if there's going to be a conclusion that there needs to be some credit, some break given to K through the admin budget because of the savings occurring in investment, I maybe that comes to this committee after that discussion. I mean, I don't, but I'm happy to have that in our meetings too. I'm open to where that discussion occurs.
Well, I think Steve Willer would be
with investments.
very, very capable and very willing to, obviously, to come in and talk about how it really works in negotiating these contracts. It's it's a contract is one thing, but the negotiations are another, and they're hard to put on paper what happens there. But he can tell us how that happens, and some of it's soft. Some of it is people view us. They didn't view us in 16 and 17 as a desirable client, but they now view KPPA as a desirable client. We're long money. We don't twitch with the ups and downs of the market, so they're happy to have money with us, and so I think he can talk about that. But there's a big difference in the theoretical and the way the world works, and I will. I think we need an education on the fact that breakpoints in the institutional area are not really existent.
Well, Britt and Mike, I would ask for your opinion on priorities. Which of these three do you think we should peel the onion first? We've got communications, we've got IT, and there's discussions about investment cost.
I
So
would take them in that order. I think the communications is information from what's happening. IT is going to take a little more detail, and we've got people that can offer that. And investments, we're gonna we're gonna have to have some digging there.
okay.
Sounds good. Yep.
Okay, Mike. Well, then you've been excellent at preparing and organizing. So I ask you to take it in that order, and we'll continue the conversation.
Great. And so I know it's your agenda, but the last item would be the next meeting, but give me some time to pull some of that together and I can reach out to Sherry and try to get something. My guess is it's going to be after the holidays as we're trying to get vows done and ACFRs done. And then, then we get to celebrate some time off before the new year. So
By holiday, you mean Halloween, don't you?
Well, the one advantage to the new world is we can have horrible weather in January and still have a Zoom meeting. So let's go forward.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Well, that is the end of the agenda. We can't go any further. So I'll see this meeting to a conclusion. It's now. Thank you all for your time and all your